Some Republicans argue the new attacks are too little, too late, and that going after Trump risks hurting the party as a whole. Critics say there's a difference between not lending support to the presumptive GOP nominee and actively working against him. Face the Nation moderator and CBS News political director John Dickerson is here. A big night for Donald Trump. How did he do it?
Well, he did it by basically winning across the board in Massachusetts and Vermont, but then in southern states like Tennessee and Alabama. And Arkansas, he won with voters who had no college education. He won with voters with college educations. He won high income and low income, different places. But basically, he won it with a message of being A, an outsider, and B, being the best sort of punch in the nose to the establishment in Washington that so many Republican voters said they wanted to punch in the nose.
There's a lot of hand-wringing going on this morning about what happens to the Republican Party. There are memories being brought up about 1964 and Barry Goldwater and the way it divided the party. What is the future of the Republican Party if Donald Trump continues his trajectory and becomes the party's nominee?
Well, that's right. There are a lot of people in Washington, but also across the country in the Republican Party who think he will really damage the party, will damage the conservative movement, and will damage other Republicans who will have to answer for the things he says. And in 1964, Nelson Rockefeller stood up at the convention and spoke out against extremism in the party. Now, he was booed and shouted down, but you had somebody there making the alternative case, loud and proud. That person hasn't emerged yet in the Republican Party. There is a lot of fear and talking about what to do, and Republicans who are in competitive races in the Senate are saying, they're going to distance themselves from Trump. But there's no collective action. There's no one person to come forward and make the anti-Trump case. Lindsey Graham makes it, but Lindsey Graham doesn't have a huge following behind him. So a lot of angst, some fantasies about how he might be able to be stopped, but really nothing that looks like it's going to stand in the way.
Ted Cruz is certainly trying. He comes away with 4 different states in his column last night: Texas, Oklahoma, Iowa, and Alaska. It's a big deal. Is it enough to keep him competitive with Donald Trump?
Well, his argument was that he was going to be able to go in Super Tuesday and win all of those southern states. So Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas. He got Oklahoma and Texas in that group, but he didn't get the others because Donald Trump has surpassed him with those voters. So he got some victories, but really not a sustainable argument for how he goes forward and beats Trump.
In his speech last night, he said to the candidates who've not won a state, to those who don't have anything significant in terms of delegates, I would prayerfully ask you to consider uniting. Even if Ben Carson and John Kasich were to suspend their campaigns today and to urge their supporters to support Ted Cruz, would it be enough for him to take on Donald Trump?
No. Well, and also Marco Rubio would have to drop out. It would help a little bit. But, the problem is those voters would have to participate. They might just think, I don't really like Ted Cruz and I don't like Donald Trump, so I'll stay home. The threat to conservatism in the Republican Party, which everybody is trying to use as a unifying argument against Donald Trump, we'll see how that motivates. That might not be enough to motivate. You might need to both be fearful of Trump and really like the alternative candidate. And that's where Ted Cruz might have some problems, is being able to build a coalition for himself.
Marco Rubio wins just one state, Minnesota. But here's what he had to say at the end of the night.
But this is a delegate thing. And here's the bottom line. Donald Trump will never get to 1,237 delegates, which is what you need to be the nominee. They're not coming to us and asking us to get out of the race. They're begging us to stay in the race. Well, first of all, I'll do anything it takes to keep Donald Trump from being our nominee. Anyone who won't condemn the KKK, who won't condemn David Duke, there's no place for that in the conservative movement.
What does that mean? I'll do anything to keep Donald Trump from being the nominee.
Well, it means he's trying to send a signal to voters that he's really in this fight. He's not dropping out. He can be trusted to kind of keep the fight going. But what does it practically mean that he'll do anything? Well, it might mean that his attacks will get even tougher, although they've been pretty tough in the last week. And then other than that, perhaps it means he might find some kind of coalition he can make with other supporters. But basically, we don't really know what it means and can't conjure up something that would actually stop Trump. What his theory relies on is that everybody who's been voting for Trump, the kinds of voters that have been attracted to Trump, just suddenly stopping. And that's not likely to happen.
I thought this number was particularly attention-getting at the end of the night among non-Trump voters, those who came out and said they had not voted for Trump in the Republican primaries. Would they be satisfied if Trump became the nominee? And 74% said no. There are Republicans who are arguing that a Trump nomination essentially guarantees a Democratic White House victory.
Yes. Now, they also say those numbers are pretty high for Ted Cruz, too, those who would be disappointed if he were the nominee, which is one of the things that sustains the Rubio candidacy, even though he hasn't or he's only won one state. I mean, part of what's sustaining Marco Rubio is not that he has a coalition put together, but the hopes that he might be able to put a coalition together, or at least that he might still be standing by the time they get to the convention in Cleveland, and that he could be the vessel into which they put these delegates if they can find some way to take those delegates away from Donald Trump.
Oh, it's so complex and really exciting as we head into the next contest in Louisiana. John, thank you.
Thanks.